Okay, so here we are in the last 2 weeks of class. You made it this far, which is great. Usually that's the artists who make it too, the ones that persevere. So the last 2 weeks are for catching up and improving what you've done so far. So far, you have the intro card, your track rendering, and the Lego scene. So all these things need to go on a demo reel for this class. And then you want to end it also with your intro card. So you start with your intro card and you end with your intro card. This is really important. Your demo reel is your introduction to any HR or art director. It doesn't matter your resume, your grades from school don't matter. What matters is what you can do. And that's only seen on your demo reel. So you should start building it now before it's too late, before you're out of school. So this will be the beginning of it. We'll put all those images, but before, I want to show you some of what your classmates have done in the past. So we can learn a little bit from them. And I have a few demos in here. Some of them are great. Some of them are okay. And some of them are not so great, let's say. So I'll start with something here. Let's say this student here was a designer. He was not going into 3D or anything like that. So I want you to pay attention to what he did for his demo reel. So I'm going to hit play here and we'll see what he did. So okay, so here's this intro card. And there's this Lego scene. So even though he couldn't move the camera, he picked a lot of angles. He said, I feel like a movie director doing this, putting the camera on different angles and rendering. You will see some assignments that we don't do anymore that have been discarded or moved to another class, like the 3D animation class or other classes like that. But if you think about it, this student does not want to be a 3D artist. He wants to be a graphic designer, although he might use 3D, to show off products, or you might get a client that asks you, hey, can you model this box and rotate around it? You obviously cannot do that in just any software, so you have to use a 3D software. But if you think about it, let's go back here. Let's see, can I go back? Here's his intro card. It's very designy looking. He made this art on Illustrator, on his Illustrator class, because he's going to be a designer, obviously. So is it okay to put other work from other classes or from what you like doing on your demo reel? Absolutely. You should actually put as much of what you actually want to do on your demo reel as you can. So if you wanted to do 2D animation, your demo reel should have a lot of 2D animation. For this class, I do want to see your track render, also your Lego and your intro card, at the very least. But if you want to add other things, please feel free. I will count the grade for the assignments we did on this class. One thing I want you to notice here about his intro card, though, it looks very nice. Almost looks like a business card. But look at how long the title is in here. So see, it was kind of hard to read. It was a little fast. So when you're doing your demo reel, make sure things can be read at least 2 or 3 times out loud, because if not, when you're showing this to HR person, the HR person will miss your name, which is kind of vital for your demo reel, right? So let's look at something else here. So this demo reel, there's parts that are not that great, like the design part of it is probably not that great. But his Lego scene, so this solar system and the bouncing ball, we don't do on this class anymore. This part right here. So he put a lot of work on his scene, but he only had one frame of it, one render. And I told him, well, why don't you grab the camera and move it? And I'll show you how to do this in a second here. And instead of just having a single frame. And that little move of the camera added so much to his render. Look at this. See? Compare this to just those few frames. I think what happened, his computer crashed and he quit. He gave up. He says, oh, the computer crashed. It's going to take too long. I'm not going to do it. Which is sad, you know, because that lets you show off your work better. You know? Just a tiny bit of camera movement makes a static image so much more appealing. If you think about it, a lot of people will see your renders and they think they will think you put it together out of toys. You'll say, I did this. And if it's a HR person that has not seen 3D, they might think, oh, you took a picture of your toys? What'd you do? You know, just a little bit of camera move, a little bit of showing off the work you actually put into it will say a lot of about you. Let me just show you this one, for example. This demo was pretty good. He actually said, I want to make my my render, my demo reel a little more interesting, so I'm going to add a little intro movie here. Uh-oh, now I've done it. Okay, there it is. So he put a lot of work in his After Effects transitions, and you know, that little intro, he made it after he had done everything else. And he had all these crazy shapes moving around. So there's his Lego scene. Solar system, which we don't do anymore. Another crazy transition there. So he went back to his solar system here. And I'll talk about what am I seeing here. So then there's this bouncing ball, which you guys will do on the 3D animation class. And he made it super elaborate. Okay, and that's the end. So by looking at this, what did you think was the strongest artwork here? A lot of people will say the bouncing ball. That is probably because the time it had on screen. Also, the solar system had a lot of time on screen. But if we go back in here, let's see, where's the Lego scene? There it is. Okay, so there's the Lego scene. Let's look at it. Okay, so I'm gonna start right before it. So there's the Lego scene. 2 seconds, maybe. 1, 2. See, so that was the Lego scene took you guys about 5 weeks, 7 weeks to complete. If you look at how long it was on screen compared to the bouncing ball or the solar system, that was in there like a full 4 seconds or less. I think it was less than 4 seconds. But if you look at it, there's a lot of work on it. You know, he made all these zombies or monsters, I don't know what they are, and then these capsules, and didn't show it off for as long as he could, or you know, he put a lot of work into this and didn't show it for long enough. So you had to think about those things, you know. Okay, how long is my scene showing? How can I show off more of what I did? Because it took me a long time to complete it. Just keep that in mind. See another one here. I'm going to show you one last one. So I have a bunch of them, but you know, just going to the same thing. Just playing to your strengths. you always want to start with what's best, your best scene or your best artwork on your demo reel when you're showing it off. This kid, the rest of his demo reel was pretty bad actually, but his Lego scene was really strong. So he put it first, which was pretty smart. You know, he put it pretty at the very first of his menu. You see, this is really bad, and this is also distorted for some reason. The textures are moving, but there is a thing. If you have 5 seconds of wow on your scene, or I'm sorry, on your demo reel, compared to 2 minutes of blah work or mediocre work, you know, if your first work impresses an HR or an art director is looking for somebody, it's gonna be, wow, that's really good. Maybe we should have this guy come in and talk to us. You know, a lot of the times they're going through so many demo reels that if the first few seconds are not good, they'll just say pass and just move on to the next one. So you want to think about that. You want to play to your strengths, put what's best first, then medium grade work, and then end with something good also. So now I'm going to show you the last, well, there's one more here I want to show you. This lady kind of had the same thing. She put sound on her demo reel, but her strength is illustration. And so he played to her strength. She put that first. Like if you notice, he started with a portrait she did. And I obviously think it should be in screen a little longer. You know, we barely see it. But then, because her 3D skills are not that strong, she played to what's strong. You know, her sketchbook. He did concept art, and then the texture she painted by hand. You know, that was her best strength. So that's what she did. And then her scene, which turned out good. So you should try to do the same. Play to your own strengths and what you actually want to do. So, okay, last one. Brett here was like, oh no, let's see, Austin. So Austin, you probably seen some of his work here around the modules. So let's look at his demo. He has sound, it's kind of loud, so I'm gonna turn it down a little bit. Oops. So again, some of these assignments you guys will not do until your animation class now. You model a huge scene just for the bouncing ball. This assignment also we don't do anymore. You just learn parenting from the truck, you know, parenting the wheels to it, and all the other things that move with it. And rotating the wheels, you know. So this is the Lego scene, and I want you to pay attention to what he did here. So even though these are still frames, the images are moving. Expressions in After Effects we don't do anymore either. But what I want you to see is that on the Lego scene, let me just mute this. On the Lego scene, we spent a lot of weeks on it. And if you show it for 2 seconds, like some of the other classmates did, you know, you're not showing off all the work. And see, even though he has a few renders here that are still images, the images are fading into each other, a transition that you can easily do in After Effects. You know, the image is scaling in. This is just a few renders, and I'll show you how to do this. It's fairly simple. You just render your image twice or 3 times. He rendered it 3 times here. He went above what I showed in class. But if you had just a still image and show that for a few seconds and then cut to the next one, you might as well be looking at a PowerPoint presentation, right? He's taking advantage of After Effects and the things he can do with it and making the image more interesting, even though it's just a still image, right? This is done rendering the image 3 times, with different textures, and then doing a swipe over the images. And I'll show you how to get that done. I showed this in class because a lot of big studios do it just to show off their work. And it's been used quite a bit, actually. So if we I showed my portfolios. I'm sorry, it's kind of old here, but if you don't show what you've done, a lot of people will miss it. Like I showed this I had to do this for the city of, I think it was West Jordan. Yeah, West Jordan, right there on the corner, and I forgot. But they didn't know what I did, so I had to show it. This took me a long time to do, so I had to, matching colors, modeling stuff, placing it on the right spot, matching the film plate. So I had to, at the very least, have a swipe going through the image and saying, this is what was there, and this is what I added to it. Let's see, on this, for example, it's the same thing. I showed pictures to my friends or family, and so what exactly did you do? Did you just take a picture? They don't know what you've done. So you have to show off at least part of the work. So, you show this was a 3D model. It is not a real picture. So I showed this in class, and Austin built on it. He added the polygon view and then the ambient occlusion render. So this is not something new. This is something that most visual studios do when they are pitching. This is how we can do work for you. Let us make your movie because we can do it better. So they show all the things they can do. They have to show somebody that might not know anything about making special effects all the things they added and how they went about building a scene. So that way you can show off, these scenes sometimes are in screen for 2-3 seconds, but they probably work on them for months. So by the same token, you will have worked on your 3D scene for many weeks and probably put a lot of work on some of the areas, and probably a lot more than I have on this. It's just a sample, but you want to show that off. So how do you do that? A few things. Let me just open After Effects. I'm just gonna open, and I have the little track render in here. And you probably have your title scene, or you're opening one of your old projects and probably forgotten all about After Effects. So that's okay. I'll just give you a little reminder here. Let's say you open your title scene. Let me add it in here. I'll just add some text, and so to pretend we have our intro card in here. So the first thing you want to do is increase the time on your composition. You probably rendered your track and it was only a few seconds, or your intro card was also a few seconds. The first thing you need is more time. So you go to the composition and do composition settings, and this window will show up, and you want to tell it how much time you want to add to it. So right now it's 5 seconds long. We'll say it might last a minute. That's kind of pushing it, but we'll say it'll last a minute. So remember, this is frames, seconds, and minutes. So I'll say it lasts 1 minute. Now I can zoom out in here with this bar at the bottom, or with the plus and minus sign, and I have a whole minute now. So let me zoom out more. Yeah, there's my minute. So I can move this end bracket here to the 1 minute, and I can add more things here. The other thing is, check the size of your render. This is a square that I did for just the module. So let's go back to composition settings, and make sure, yeah, it's not even close. So remember, most images nowadays, you know, what you watch on YouTube or um, regular DVD movies, yeah, they're all 1920 by 1080. You can do 4K or 8K, but it will take forever to render. You know, just beware, your computer will be really slow. So 1920 by 1080 is fine. We'll say okay, and you can, let's just combine these layers into one. So I'm gonna select them all and say layer, precompose. So I just have one layer here. We'll call it truck. There it is, and I know it only lasted 5 seconds, so I'm gonna shorten it here to 5 seconds. So I'm gonna come over here, right there. I'm gonna hit Alt and end bracket and square bracket. Now I have my track movie here. I could add my text, and I have a problem. My movie is too small, so we'll hit the scale tool. You can open the arrow here, say transform, scale. But if you hit the first letter of the word, except for opacity, opacity is T, and I think of transparency, but we'll hit S for scale. And then you could make your movie bigger, but in this case, this movie is way small. You know, I made a GIF for the module, so I made it small. So most likely I would have to render again. So we'll put it over here, and then we'll have our title first. Let's say, I'll just add some text here. My name, and I'll select it here, and maybe make it a little bigger. Maybe move the pivot point to the middle. And then center the layer. Let's see, layer, transform, center in view. So let's say this is my one layer, then my movie, and then we would have our Lego render, right? And you're probably wondering, okay, how did you guys have one render that would show off the polygons and or the wireframe, and another render that would have just the ambient occlusion? Now I'll show you here. It's fairly simple. So now you have your two clips here. You may want to put some nice transitions, just like you watch the presets for text. There's presets for transitions here that you can look through. If you want to add something specific, you could browse to presets, and you will see a bunch of transitions, just like you watch the presets for the text animation. But the simplest one would be to fade out things, you know. So I'm going to select this first layer, hit T for transparency, turn on the animation, so it's 100%, and then when it's done, it's 0%. So I'll just type 0 in there. So now my name fades out, you know, and then my next layer starts. You come to the beginning and fade it into. So I'm gonna hit T on this one also. T at the beginning is 0%. Then a few frames in, it's 100%. So now the transition is a little less abrupt, you know. So if I hit play, you know, it's a little nicer on the eyes rather than cutting from one to the other. And obviously, you know, you would want to scale. If your renders are smaller, you would want to scale in here. Mine is too low resolution. I would have to re-render from Maya. But let's say I wanted to add that effect where I saw the model showing off the wireframe and showing off the textures. That's pretty simple. If you go to Maya, you know, I have actually those renders that I did earlier to show you how to save. I'm going to do one with just wireframe. So if I select my object and say assign new material, you will see if you go to Arnold, down here on the Arnold, there is the Arnold materials, there's an AI wireframe. It's down here at the bottom. So if I click on that, that will show, and it's not visible here. It shows up when you render. So I'll turn on open the Arnold render view. Whoops, I missed it here. Open Arnold render view, which will open right here. And if you hit play, you will see that the model is now rendering wireframe, right? Like everything else normal, but the model is rendering wireframe. So you could render one time with your model being textured, another time with your model having this wireframe, and the wireframe has, let's go here to the material at the very end. The wireframe has triangles. You can turn them off on the material. You can change triangles to polygons. Now showing polygons. So you know, you just have to be patient. That's all it would take, you know, just rendering once with all the colors, rendering again with just a wireframe. You could render it with an ambient occlusion. So let's say I add a material that's white, let's say assign new material, and we'll just put an ambient occlusion here. Now if I look at my object here and hit play on the render, you'll see it has an ambient occlusion. So all I'm seeing is the shadows on it without being affected by the lights on the scene. So it's occluding the lights on the scene. You could also, you know, put this character on a separate layer. So if you have it selected and then go to your channel box and click on this button here, this will add your object to a different layer. So there's my layer. You can turn off that layer. You know, now the object is gone, and I could render the background by itself. So really, let's see, where are those? What Austin did was not really rocket science, right? He was just patient. And a lot of us give up too quickly. We think, oh, I'm done. This is done. When you could improve your art if you were a little more patient, you know, and if you have the time, if you've been working early, if you wait till the very last minute, usually you don't have time to do these kinds of things. You had to plan ahead. So, you know, he didn't do rocket science. He was just patient, and persevere. You know, that's what separates the great artists from the mediocre ones. Now, let's say, let me just render this so you can see the difference. So let me just close this, do an actual render of the scene. This will take a minute, so I'll cut this part off.